Hey, family, this is Dr. William Clark here. Hope all is well, and hope that this day finds you making progress towards your goals and, enhancing your work to meet the needs of your customers rather. I want to continue our conversation here. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to manage the federal freeze and on grants and loans. This is something that's really hitting home for a lot of folks for a number of reasons. And in our previous broadcast, we talked about what actually is happening versus all of the conversation that's going back and forth on various platforms here. And I want to make sure that, at least from our perspective, since you and I we share this space together, that we are effectively focusing on what matters most for the nonprofit organization that you are leading, and that you are having the right type of conversations with your team, your board members, your stakeholders, because this has hit the news in a major way, and folks are trying to figure out what's next. Now, uh, in our previous broadcast, we talked about where things are, what's happening. I want to point you back to that particular broadcast. Find that on any of our social platforms under Dr. William P. Clark. But I want to talk about the management process of these situations. As I indicated before, these things have happened before. Now, it may have happened under Democratic administrations, Republican administrations, at the federal level, at the state level, at the city level, at the private level, and everywhere in between. But for those of you that have been through something like this before, you understand how this works. It doesn't make it any less painful of a process to go through. It's just that there are reference points that you point back to that helps you navigate through what should be done, or how we as a team will navigate this and make decisions. And for some of your staff people, this may be new. Um, for some of your board members, this may be new. For new supporters of your organization, this may be new. And so they may have tons of questions and absolutely zero reference points on what to do and how to do it. So I want to walk through that and talk about this a little bit, about how to manage this with folks in your inner circle that you're leaning on to help you process through these challenges. Got a couple things to share here, so we'll just walk through it together. And as I'm going through these, leave a comment, with your thoughts on what to do and how you're handling it. We'd love to hear from you about this and continue the conversation on whatever platform you're utilizing to capture this broadcast. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is making sure you stay informed and monitor updates. It is important that you and your colleagues, you're staying connected to reputable news sources. Now, I understand you love to get your news from any and everywhere. This probably is a good time to navigate to sources that are reputable, that are actually capturing the news as is. And I would encourage you to listen to the White House briefings. I would encourage you to listen to folks who are actually articulating said issue. Look at the executive order, read that, study that, understand that. Obviously, come to a conclusion that makes sense, that's logical, as well as read information from reliable sources. This could be other federal agencies that may be managing pieces or all of this. Nonprofit advocacy groups. This is where your invested dollars into lobbyists come into play, particularly at the federal level, state level. Reputable news outlets that report news, right? Who are actually talking to the sources, releasing this information and capturing their feedback and writing it down or recording it in some way. This allows you to stay up to speed on policy changes. And this matters because if you're wholly relying upon social media and people's outrage and response and feedback and pushback and whatever the case may be, what you're going to end up doing is tainting your perspective on things. And this can also create difficult conversations. Your stakeholders are already being tainted by conversations that may not be accurate. Some board members may be going through pieces of information and getting information that may not be accurate. So you don't want to contribute to that. You want to have sources. You want to cite your sources. You want to footnote where you're getting this information from so that when you're having these conversations, you can point back to, well, according to these sources, this is what we're learning, right? This is what we're hearing, etc. If there are any webinars or briefings that are being released, I would encourage you to attend. Spend time doing that. If you can't attend, have one of your team members do this. Make sure that they're capturing notes if it can be recorded and you can listen to it later instead of listening to one of your favorite podcasts. See if you can listen to that webinar or read the briefing later. And if you have the resources, check out any legal consultation you may have available to you to understand the potential impact on you. Number two, you need to take a moment with your CFO or your bookkeeper or your accountant to understand the immediate financial exposure you may have at the moment. So, are there any funding sources at risk right now because of this threat of a funding freeze? If so, what are those sources? Are they direct or indirect? There's a difference. It may end up, resulting in the same outcome, but you need to identify are they direct or indirect. So, for example, if you have DEI specific funding that's coming from the federal government, that would be what I would consider a direct risk, right? But if you are receiving funding from a third party, such as your state, such as another nonprofit who has represented a collection of nonprofits, a portfolio of nonprofits to secure federal dollars. Maybe it's a private foundation who's utilizing private dollar or federal dollars, your city, or bit or a partner, a business partner, and their funding is tied to DEI, but your obligation isn't. That would be indirect exposure. Because if they have DEI specific funding or environmental funding that is currently at risk, they may be at risk of losing those dollars. In essence, losing those dollars, you losing those dollars. So that would be indirect. So understand your exposure, right? To understand like what's happening right now. As a part of this exposure evaluation, take a look at your cash flow, take a look at your reserves, and just like any other business, nonprofits are figuring out what cash flow levels make sense, how much to have in the bank. Some have 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever your policy is for whatever reason. And you may be in a good spot for now, right? Lord willing, you are. There's some of you who may not be in a good spot and you're banking on that next large deposit or transfer next week or in the next 30, 60 days, and you're running low. Are you low on cash? Are you low on reserves? If you're running low, are there any sources you can tap into, whether it's additional cash, investments, or um, any lines of credit that you might need to lean into just in case things get dicey? Because of this delay, and we're still talking about financial exposure, you may want to take a moment and determine, do you need to pause on any new commitments that you're getting ready to make or just made, whether it's hiring, expansion, investments, partnerships, etc., particularly if those investments are reliant upon federal commitments that might have been recent, right before, right after the election, right before, right after the inauguration. You might want to take a second look at that to see if you need to pause on them and delay them. We talked about this in our previous installment. There needs to be a contingency plan. We call this emergency preparedness plan, where you're doing a lot of scenario planning. You're prioritizing essential services. You're talking with funders. Even if there isn't an appearance of any federal impact, you want to have a conversation with your funders to talk about what they're hearing, what they're seeing. And why does this matter, y'all? Even though you may determine that there's very little exposure for you and your organization, the conversation with your funder really gives insight into what may be going on across the industry. Now, hear this. There are a couple of ways to look at this. This could be this could impact some relationships that you did not consider, some relationships that are currently active, or you have active relationships with some of these other providers. They may be at risk. because if they have funding that is at risk, they may not be able to provide resources or partnerships or relationships or services to you that you're accustomed to. That can be problematic, even though you're fine. Therefore, hitting you in an indirect way again. There may be some providers who may end up going out of business if this thing does go through and there's a risk of that happening. So if they go out of business, funders still want to provide services, the community still needs services. Are you in a position potentially to pick up the slack and pick up that new line of business, therefore generating new revenue? It might not be as great as the other sources because federal dollars may be tied to it, but would you be able to do that? And could this be an opportunity for you to expand? You may hear some things from your funders that may prompt you to prop up another organization for a period of time, where you may lend resources, offer support, whether they need, some overhead costs covered. They may need rent covered, staff covered, right? I don't know what that may look like for some of the relationships, but this could be an opportunity to learn. That's the whole point of why you want to talk to your funders, because you want to figure out what's happening that isn't being reported. Because there's the national story, and then there are the national nonprofits who are dependent upon these dollars in a significant way, in a meaningful way. But then there's the regional and the local stories that are not being reported, that go undetected to the public sphere. And yet these local stories likely impact you a lot more than these national stories, because it impacts some of your friends and some of your colleagues and some of your competitors. So this is a huge opportunity here. Now, there are a couple more things I want to cover here. If you're thinking about these things and you want to have a conversation, head on over to elipatrick.com. Again, that's elipatrick.com. Our team, they're standing by, waiting to respond to your email, waiting to schedule a consultation with you to talk about this. We're happy to work through this with you, to talk about strategies that will lead to you being creative, strategic, intentional, smart as it relates to preparing for the what ifs. And as I said in the previous broadcast, let's say this works out and things smooth over, and this was just nothing more than a scare. It does uh, challenge all of us to think about, how do we prepare for the what ifs in this business, from a revenue standpoint, from an operation standpoint, from an income standpoint, from a financial standpoint, right? Disaster preparedness can happen at any given time, under any administration, under any circumstance. So, what are we doing to put those things in place to prepare for the what ifs? If you want to have that conversation, you want us to be a part of your conversation as a objective third party who's invested in your success, go on over to elipatrick.com and schedule a consultation, and someone from our team will be glad to work with you. So, a couple other thoughts I want to share with you as it relates to how to better manage the federal freeze, the potential of it, right? Next, number four, you want to start diversifying revenue streams. If you haven't done so already, or it's been one of those things where I'm gonna get to it, man. New year, new me. We're gonna have a new plan in the next couple months. Yeah, tomorrow's not promised. Tomorrow might not be here, and today is a great opportunity to start thinking about diversified streams. So whether you want to add new donors, new sources, you want to add private donors, you want to be prepared to receive any emergency funding that may come into play, or you may be able to receive earned income, or expand earned income, or start an earned income venture, fee for service models, etc., that makes sense for your organization. Now's a great time to have that conversation. I don't think it's worth waiting any longer if you've been waiting. We've been past the time where nonprofits uh, have been challenged to talk about sustainability measures. And this is the time. This is the time now to start talking about diversified revenue. It's time. Next, number five, you want to engage in advocacy. So it's not enough to learn, it's not enough to have these conversations over coffee and to talk with your colleagues. And your staff and your funders, but advocate for what you think works, for your organization, your customers, the region, your competitors, those who you do business with, etc. And start that conversation with your lawmakers, particularly if you're in the legislative season in your state, in your town, etc. Talk to your national legislators as well. Let them know. Let them know. If you've never done this before, do not go down the rabbit hole of saying I haven't done this before, don't know what to do. Listen, today's a great day to start and to learn. If you haven't done this before, talk to any of your competitors or colleagues who have relationships with some of the state and national legislators and join the bandwagon. Join the conversation. Listen. If nothing else, learn the process and systematically ingratiate yourself in the process where you're articulating needs and concerns, recommendations, ideas, how to respond. So this becomes a part of the arsenal beyond the moment, because for some of you this will be just a moment. This For some of you this will be just a blip in the news cycle. For some this will be devastating. All right, regardless of where you are, you want to make sure, for number 5, you're engaging in advocacy with those who make the law, those who are responsible for upholding the law that impacts revenue, income, etc. for your organization. So contact your lawmakers, join coalition efforts, which is very helpful because it takes the pressure off of you thinking you got to do it by yourself. And then take what you learn from what you're reading, what you're hearing, and from uh, what you're hearing from from the lawmakers to educate stakeholders, right? Because your stakeholders are going to have tons of questions. You want to make sure you're equipping them with the information that's necessary. Number 6, we talked about this a little bit before, but it's worth repeating. If you have legal counsel, talk with them, leverage them, use them, talk about what your options are legally, talk about what you are able to do, talk about what recourse you may or may not have, talk about any challenges you may have, and above all else, also talk about contract obligations, right? Review expectations and obligations, but above all else, make sure you're prepared to remain compliant as changes are being made, right? So you may be in agreement with this freeze, you may not be in agreement with the freeze. Regardless of what your agreement status is, you want to make sure you're compliant until things work out and get smoothed out. All right, lastly, number 7, reassure your team, your stakeholders, of your support, your leadership, and to lead with transparency. This simply means that you want to be proactive in communicating. So don't let folks continue to hear this message on social media and you don't address it. Right? There has to be a meeting of the minds of your senior leadership team as soon as you hear this particular broadcast. I don't know when you want to hear this. If you haven't done so already, have the conversation. Talk with your team about it. Be proactive. Circle around. Get a powwow. Get a powwow with your board, right? Make sure that your board is aware, your board chair is aware what's happening. What are they hearing? Because they're hearing the news too, but they want to hear from you. What's your perspective on all this, right? What are you sharing? As a part of this reassurance and leading with transparency, make sure you're boosting morale, because people who haven't been through this may be freaking out and they don't know what to do. For those who are old hands and have been through this before, this may be a new thing that they haven't considered before or seen coming, and so they may be freaking out too. So you're gonna have to boost morale. You're gonna have to acknowledge concerns, but still make sure you're focusing on a message of resiliency and strategic solutions, and the fact that we're going to push through this and we're going to make this happen and we're going to survive, whatever that means. We don't know what that means yet because things are still up in the air, which is a credible statement to make. But this team has been built to strategize and plan and to organize. We've built a culture of planning. We built a culture of navigating challenges. We built a culture of thinking. We built a culture of evaluating and making pivots where appropriate. This is what we do best, right? And this is why you've been hired. This is why you're here. And this we're going to take full advantage of. We're going to do this together as a team. Then, lastly, as a part of the reassurance and the leading with transparency, leverage community support. Your community needs you. Like you're in business for a reason. That is a simple message in and of itself. You're in business for a reason. People trust you. People trust your business. People trust your organization. And so their support means a lot. And you want to take full advantage of that. So you got to rally their support. between the board, your staff, and your stakeholders, your community, etc. Now, for some of you, you may be listening to this saying, Dr. Clark, man, it sounds great. I don't know where and how to start the conversation. Give me a call. Reach out to us at elipatrick.com. Visit us at elipatrick.com. Schedule a consultation. You don't have to do this alone. And this is me sharing this with you. You don't have to do this alone. We're here to help you through strategic conversations. We're here to help you think creatively and smartly about your options and how to move forward. We're here to help you prepare for the what ifs. This is what strategic planning is. This is what leadership coaching and development is. It's preparing for the what ifs. We don't prepare for the rosy moments. We prepare for all that comes into play when it comes to running a nonprofit organization and the challenges that may pop up, such as this. This is a challenge that many organizations have not considered, but now it's here. It's here. We're here. I'm here with you. And I want to challenge you to go ahead over to elipatrick.com, schedule consultation, contact us, email us. Somebody is standing by right now to take your call, take your email. We're here to help you. We're here to have that conversation. My name is Dr. William Clark. I'm looking forward to working with you, being a part of your journey, helping you through this process, navigating through all these challenges. And my hope is that you figure out what's next for your organization so you continue to provide the services that your customers and your community needs, not just for the next couple of weeks, not just for the next couple of months, but long term. This is all about sustainability, y'all. I'll catch you on the flip.